Hi, welcome to Growing Outside the Box. This video is about freeze drying meat. When I first started freeze drying, I had a lot of questions about what kind of meat to freeze dry, and honestly, I still have a lot of questions. I thought that this video would be helpful though to kind of get you started on some of the things that I've learned about freeze drying meat. I have tried a few different experiments on some different forms of meat, and I wanted to show you sort of the things I've experienced and then do a little reveal. So I'll show you a little bit of that at the end of the video about how things have turned out and how they've sat over several months. So the first thing that I chose to freeze dry was pre-cooked meatballs. They were beef meatballs that came from Costco. Also, I freeze dried chicken sausages that came from Costco as well. And I found that having pre-cooked meat was a little bit easier. It took a lot less time to freeze dry. I think the biggest thing that you should know when you go to freeze dry meat is the grease. So having a lot of grease in anything that you freeze dry is not a great idea. Just like oil doesn't have an extended 30-year shelf life, you have that same problem when you have grease that's in meat. So the grease will go rancid. Whether or not you've cooked it, some of the grease will continue to come out in the drying process. So in order to help that process along, I've lined my trays with paper towel. And then I also did make the mistake of just putting raw meat directly on the paper towel. Don't do that. It sticks, and we're gonna have to peel it off a little bit when we go to cook it. So what I've done instead is having the paper towel on one layer and then putting parchment down. That way you are still absorbing the grease and you're making a non-stick surface so that you don't end up with paper in your food.
The next thing we went to freeze dry was 80% lean ground beef with quinoa and veggies. There was a sale on beef, and so we made our own dog food. We did this raw by packing it down onto the tray with parchment and paper towel to soak up the grease. And this is how it looked when it came out. And it read free from any moisture with the moisture meter. So we were happy about that. It took a lot less time than the lean turkey that we tried, and I think that's because it had a mixture of quinoa and vegetables in it as well.
Remember that freeze drying isn't cooking your meat, so any bacteria that goes that's on your meat when you're freeze drying it, if you choose to do that raw, you're taking the risk of also having the bacteria in your machine and also storing it long term. So make sure that you're using products that are clean meat from sources you trust in order to make sure that you're not getting you and your family sick. I got this moisture meter on Amazon. I have the link in the description. It's for building materials, for walls, and we're gonna just go ahead and use it on here. So we're just gonna stab these prongs into the food. Okay, that's showing that there's moisture. So these chicken sausages, although they feel crispy and crackling, are not done. We'll go ahead and try the meatballs. I can tell already that these ones are done. So there's no moisture. And how you know by feel is that they are definitely lighter weight and styrofoamy almost. So the moisture meter is not detecting any moisture left on the meatballs, so we can go ahead and pull those out. But these chicken sausages will have to take more time. And possibly one of the ways that I could have made it go faster would to have been to cut it into smaller chunks. So we just had half of them, but cutting into smaller chunks might have made it take a little less time. Sure seems like it's done. But if you look closely, you can see a little bit of grease still there. Well, so we're gonna hopefully hope that that will dry out of this next process. So I'm gonna cut it up to see if I can get it. This one's much drier. To see if I can get it to make sure that it's all the way out. Okay, after giving an additional 2 to 3 hours of dry time, we are going to give our chicken sausages a test with our moisture meter. Give it a stab there. And you can see no moisture. So that's good, they're done. Took them 28 hours. Okay, so the moment of truth. We're gonna open up this beef meatballs. It's August and we freeze dried these in April, and they are beef meatballs that came from Costco. So I'm just going to cut them open. They smell good still. They still look really good. They still look like when I put them in. They feel nice and lightweight and almost like styrofoam. And I'm going to use this moisture meter to double check to see, is there any liquid in them? My guess is probably not. And nope. So these have lasted 4 months without any issues. So that's exciting. Little word of caution when you're freeze drying any meat that's been processed. So pre-made meatballs, pre-made sausages, perhaps lunch meat, it concentrates the flavors of the seasoning and the salt. So it's not always the best. It can be overly salty. You might have to really try to water it down, use less of it once you reconstitute it. Okay, so now we're gonna give our basil and black pepper chicken sausages from Costco a try. They're also very lightweight, and they smell exactly like they did when they went in. And let's give it a try with the moisture meter. So it's still reading as no moisture, which is good. They do feel a lot more soft, a little bit greasier than the meatballs did, but they don't smell rancid at all. And I'm gonna taste a little piece. They're a little chewy. It's almost like, because they're black pepper flavor, it almost tastes like chicken jerky. It's kind of a neat texture. It isn't rancid at all, but I think it's just an indication that, you know, the shelf life will be limited. It's not a 35-year shelf life product. So I'm glad I tested it. It tastes pretty decent, and we'll be sure to use it up and rotate through it. Unfortunately, I lost my footage of freeze drying the ground turkey that I freeze dried. It was 97% lean and about a pound per tray that I had put on the tray raw. And when I went today to kind of go look through my stuff that I had done, I noticed that this bag of turkey was soft, and the other bags that I had sounded crunchy still, and so I was a little bit worried about this. So I wanted to open this one up and check it out. And I just broke it apart just now. You can hear it still is crunchy, but in this section right here, it's a little pink. So unfortunately, I had let that go, and I think, bummer, it's showing about 13.6% moisture. So that is such a bummer, but it was an experiment. So this is bad. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and try the beef and veggie mixture that we made for the dog. So this is 80-20 ground beef, quinoa, and mixed veggies. It was a sale on beef, so we wanted to stock up while the prices were decent. This is much more crispy than the turkey. This is also done raw. It doesn't smell bad at all. It smells just like it did when it went in. It's crunchy. So let's give it a try with the moisture meter. Not reading that there's any moisture in it, so that's great. Our dog says, "Can I try some?" Reflection on freeze drying meat. I'm not sure that I would want to freeze dry straight raw meat. I feel like the chances are just high that you're running the risk of just losing your product. I feel a little bit bummed that that turkey is now just trash, because we have potential of some nasty bacteria in there, so we wouldn't want to use it. So I think in the future I'll probably stick to pre-cooked meat, trying to cook out all the fat and keep the shelf life as long as possible. I think also when you're sauteing ground meat, you're creating smaller pieces and it helps the process go a little faster, and you don't have the same issue with having a big brick of meat and like a raw layer in the middle. So those are some of the things that I've learned. I also not putting it straight on a paper towel. Hopefully these things will help you when you go to use your freeze dryer. Let me know if you have any suggestions or comments about this video. Thanks. Take care.